व आलि मुहम्मद व अज्जिल फरजहम। तेरी ज़ैनब लुट रही है ए अज़ीज़ो तुम कहाँ हो, सूए कूफा जा रही है ए अज़ीज़ो तुम कहाँ हो, मेरे हाशिम के जवानों जुल्म से हम को बचाओ, नोके नेज़ा सज चुकी है बीबियों की वो रिदाएं, हम पे हर शे रो रही है ए अज़ीज़ो तुम कहाँ हो, जिसको महमिल में सजा कर लाए थे मैं हूँ वो ज़ैनब, अपनी निगरानी में रख कर लाए थे मैं हूँ, आज तन्हा हो गई है ए अज़ीज़ो तुम कहाँ हो, मेरे बाबा शिमर मुझको है डराता, सुए मकतल रोके देती है सदा मेरी सकीना, खाक पे सो ना सकी है ए अज़ीज़ो तुम कहाँ हो, जिसका अब्बास सा भाई हो से गम क्यों रुलाए, मेरी उम्मीदों पे पानी कौन होगा जो फिराए, अब कयामत आ गई है ए अज़ीज़ो तुम कहाँ हो, बेकजावा ऊंटों पे हैं आले ताहा वा हुसैना, हाथ बंधे कैद होकर जा रहे हैं वा गरीबा, आज ज़हरा रो रही है ए अज़ीज़ो तुम कहाँ हो, जैसे मक़तल आया शाहिद खुद को बीबी ने गिराया, रो के मोशी बिन्ते ज़हरा ने ये मक़तल में पुकारा, तेरी ज़ैनब आ गई है ए अज़ीज़ो तुम कहाँ हो, तेरी ज़ैनब लुट रही है ए अज़ीज़ो तुम कहाँ हो, सूए कूफा जा रही है ए अजीजो तुम कहाँ हो सल्लु अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद बराए खुशनुदी इमाम ज़माना बुलंदतर सलावत अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद फातिहा
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة تسبقه بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجه روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين رب العالمين أما بعد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه إن الحسين مصباح الهدى وسفينة النجاة صدق النبي وآمنا به زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أحبائي, we're at the doorstep of Shahr Muharram. This month of Azar, this month of transformation, a month of reformation, and a month which in essence is supposed to be marked, if what we could say, the high voltage of electricity. Shahr Muharram by nature and the commemoration of the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shahadah, Abi Abdullah alayhi salam. Allahumma sholli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The event in itself as a divinely ordained event is one that is so powerful. Perhaps the enemies of the revolution of Imam al-Hussein have understood the power of the revolution more than anyone else. And when an enemy studies the strength of this revolution, they then go on to implement steps to manipulate and to downplay the power of that revolution, to ensure that the maximum potential is not achieved from this. Which is why, if you were to study any divine religion, Abrahamic religion, you will not find any event in any history that has faced so much opposition and has been the target of suppression, the likes of Karbala. Any religion, rather, if you broaden that parameter, you will find that there is no culture or no race, any event that defines a culture, any event that defines a race, historically speaking, there is none that matches or even comes close to Karbala when it came to persecution and suppression of the reality of that revolution. You go and you look through human history from the time that it has been authored. You will not find an event where there is a madloom like Sayyid al-Shahadah, and governments and historians have joined forces together to conceal the reality of that event like the way it has happened for Karbala. And despite these global forces across the passage of time trying to conceal Karbala and the message of Imam al-Hussein, 1400 years later, sarahatan, it's a miracle what has reached us from Karbala, what has reached us from Imam al-Hussein. When you look at the attempts of the enemies of Ahlul Bayt to cover up the reality of what happened in Karbala. How did this tragedy of Karbala reach us till today, 1400 years later? There is a bahath, there is a study which is done from an academic perspective, the science of the transmission of history. This is one. And then number two, you have the science of the transmission of history through the nature of commemoration. And this is what is particular for us tonight. Generation after generation, from the 61st year after Hijrah, generation after generation, individuals, families, and communities went above and beyond to ensure the commemoration of Karbala remained alive. And it is from here, generation after generation, that the elders, through their insistence on the commemoration of Ashura and their insistence on the commemoration of the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein, they passed and they ingrained this culture onto the younger generation, such that when that younger generation grew up on the practices of their fathers and their grandfathers, they upheld these commemorations and they passed it on to the third generation, and the third to the fourth, and the fourth to the fifth, so on so forth, 1400 years till today. And this is not a claim which is theoretical and difficult to understand. Bas intum mu'mineen, if you look at your own backgrounds and you look at your own history and you look at your own communities, you will find that practices of our fathers and our grandfathers from back in the day have played a great role in contributing to the manner and the extent to which we commemorate Ashura today. What our fathers did, what our grandfathers did, such that we have, when you speak to the elders within, for example, within our communities, and they would tell us about their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers when they migrated, for example, from the subcontinent, either towards East Africa or to other parts of the world. Many times they would leave everything they had. In terms, some of them left everything they had from wealth, and they left their families. You find that they would come with them, they carried one possession. And this was something to do with either the ziyarat or the majlis of Sayyid al-Shahadah. Such that when they landed in the country that they immigrated to, one of the first things they did was establish a Husayniyah or a masjid. And you find this has been a norm even with second generation and third generation migrants. This passing on of culture and this passing on of tradition, commemorating the masa'ib and commemorating the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein, in essence is a trust. You and I, in this generation, will be judged based on how we upheld the commemoration of Imam al-Hussein and how we passed this torch on to the future generation. History will judge us, the Malaika will judge us, Ahlul Bayt will judge us, and Allah Azza wa Jal will judge us Yawmul Qiyamah on how we passed the torch on to the generation after us when it came to the commemoration of Imam al-Hussein. Why? Because this commemoration of Imam al-Hussein in all its forms, through the majalis, through the marsiya, through the nawha, through the matamdari, in all its extents and in all its intensities, is a door of guidance. Rasulullah says, Inna al-Hussein misbahul huda, the lantern of guidance. We were speaking with the Shabab just before the majlis began as well. When you look back, person looks back at himself or looks back at his colleagues. Wama alayna with what other people do. We look back at ourselves. A time in life, whether it was teenage years, teens, early 20s, whatever it was, a person who was irreligious, person who sinned openly, person who didn't care about salat, person who didn't aslan care about deen. Irreligious as that youth might have been, but because the surrounding was such that importance was given to Ashura, and that sinner, no matter what sin he committed under the sun, the fact that that person in his youth came for a majlis Imam al-Hussein, participated in the azadari of Imam al-Hussein, volunteered in any other thing to do with tabarruk of Imam al-Hussein, to do anything with the majlis of Imam al-Hussein. Years later, when you find that that person made a total change in his life and came towards the religion, this light switch that exists inside of us, where one stage of your life you are irreligious, and then there comes a phase where you become religious. In between, there is a phase of self-contemplation and reflection, and suddenly a switch goes on. You think this phase happens by chance? You think this switch appears within us by chance? Abadan la. Hadith say to us that there is something you have done in your life, even when you were a sinner, that one good deed then is preserved, and you can say saved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such that the manifestation and the reward of that good deed is that it becomes that light switch inside of you. It gives birth to your consciousness. Is this azan, these majalis of Imam al-Hussein that have become the reason of salvation? People from not being compliant to religion, later on in their lives became compliant because of the barakat of this majlis. This is what, Ya Ali, this is what Rasulullah said, Inna al-Hussein misbahul huda, the lantern of guidance. There are some people, they don't have the faculty of consciousness within them. See, to embark upon change in life, when you want to change yourself towards more iman, towards more taqwa, you need to have the faculty of consciousness, this biting voice inside of you that suddenly awakens. This voice inside of you that suddenly awakens. That ihtimam, where does this come from? Does it have an existence? Does it just suddenly appear like that? La, sure. A person does something in order to get to that stage. Just like in, for example, business. Person, when they think and how do they come across creative solutions or innovative solutions to become more profitable? How does this happen? Moeno, he's sleeping one day and he wakes up with wahi. La, it's a gradual process because there is ihtimam, because there is concern, because he's passionate about this. This always thinking about the business then triggers something within your mind that starts a thought process. That thought process leads towards a creative solution, innovative solution. And there are many reasons that could be the financial reward. It could be that it's my own business, I want to grow it. Could be many things. Same thing in sport. How is it that sportsmen excel within their field? You look today in the world of sports, the technology that has been invested in it, the science of medicine that goes behind it, perfecting technique. How does this happen? How does a sportsman just wake up with skill in that way? Yes, there are those who are talented, but even those who are talented need nourishment. How does that come? It comes with that ihtimam inside of them. Because they persevere, they have that shauq, they have that interest. Only if you use the same idea, when it comes to ihtimam, when it comes to having concern and caring about the majalis of Imam al-Hussein, participating inside the majalis of Imam al-Hussein, even for a non-practicing person, this majlis then becomes the source, or it becomes that faculty that gives birth to the power of your conscious inside of you, where you now start to question the life which I'm living, is it worth it? Or do I embark upon the deen? This is this power within the majalis of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And as we're saying to the shabab, in every year, to tie the topic together, there is no event, we said, that has been the subject of suppression and oppression more than Karbala. And in every year since 61 AH, there has not been a single Shia community on the face of this earth except that they have faced challenges when it came to upholding the majalis of Imam al-Hussein. During the time of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, you think it was easy to hold majalis? La. During the time of Imam al-Baqir and Sadiq, there was only a small time. And that even when Bani Abbas understood the power of the majalis, they went forward to put a proper crackdown on it. Such that we have hadith that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was holding majlis in his house. The women were crying. And government agencies, spies, came inside and they disrupted the majlis. They took a hold of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, who was barefoot and without an amama on his head. They pulled him out of the house and they said, why are the people gathered in your house crying? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, we are crying for an infant that has died in the house. They thought that there is a stillbirth that happened, or a child miscarried or infant died, and they left. Aslan Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is referring to Ali al-Askar alayhi salam. Same thing with Imam al-Qadim and Rida. Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam. During the time of Imam al-Hadi, they used to openly kill Zawar. There was a governmental announcement. Can you imagine? An entire government has made it a part of its legal system. It's the law of the land that if you are found to go for ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein, you will be executed on the spot. Imagine living in a country like that. In these circumstances, refer back to history, refer back to the books of hadith. Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, instead of holding back and telling his people don't visit Imam al-Hussein, he increased the intensity of the hadith and mentioned double the rewards. So they want to kill, go. They used to sever the limbs of the people going for Imam al-Hussein. Ziyarah. You want to go for ziyarah? This would be army, government forces, police. They would say, you want to go for ziyarah? Person going towards Karbala. The penalty for you going for ziyarah is that we sever one of your limbs. Choose. You want your right hand to be cut, your left hand, your right leg, your left leg. And yalla ba'ad. Decide. You still want to go for the ziyarah? Choose. And you know, at that time, to sever the limb is not a mechanical process with all the medical technology that you have and anesthetics and this and that. La. They actually severed the arm with whatever tools they had, either a sword or an axe we have in hadith. To sever the arm is one thing. But how do you seal the wound? Books of Sirah say they used to pour burning oil on the severed part of the wound to seal it together. Yalla, go for Imam al-Hussein. Such that books of hadith say, or books in the Sirah mention, one of the Bani Abbas guards who were there, they caught one of the Za'ir. This is happening under the watch of Imam al-Hadi. Masoom Imam. Under this sort of dhulm, he said, encourage Imam al-Hussein. What is this power within Imam al-Hussein? Such that Imam al-Hadi said, this is the point to think. What power lies in the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein? What power lies in the majalis of Imam al-Hussein? Such that Imam al-Hadi said, preserving and attaining that power is more important than your life or your limb. And Imam doesn't speak out of emotion. Imam knows the deen better than us. If there was a time to implement taqiyya, the Imam would have implemented it. You don't find a single book that speaks about the Imam saying taqiyya. La. Rather, when you look under that, you see the scale of the rewards are doubled. Aslan, the rewards are doubled. Such that one of the Za'ir, they were going, the guard said, bring out your right arm, such that we can sever it. This is the penalty for this year. Anyone going for ziyarah, right arm is going. He said, I can't give you my right arm. He said, why? He said, last year you took my right arm. This year take my left. This, ahibba'i, is how Ashura reached you and me. When generations before us were staunch and uncompromising, that's what we were saying in the beginning of the majlis, generation after generation after generations. When they took that stance, today it reached us. And if we uphold the same stances, our children and our children's children have a chance. And remember, the responsibility upon which we are judged is how do you pass the torch that has been received to us by those before us. Are we from those who are going to build on that flame which has been passed upon us by those before us? Or are you going to blow out the flame and give this burnt out torch to the children and Ya Ali? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. And I will be, ahibba'i, very frank. Frank for you mu'mineen who are here. Frank for those who are following this. Because ma yuhimmuna, what is of utmost concern for us, is the message of Sayyid al-Shahadah and our loyalty towards Sayyid al-Shahadah. Commemorating Shahrul Muharram in the face of a global pandemic. And there is a lot of kalam on this. Kalam that has haqq, but there is kalam that also has batil. Such that even the marja'iyya al-ulya, as they say in Najaf al-Ashraf, the higher authority of the marja'iyya, and from them, Ayatollah al-Udma Sayyid Ali al-Sistani, and you have a number of the other maraja, Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq al-Shirazi, and you have Ayatollah Sheikh Wahid al-Khurasani and Rawhani and others who have spoken about this issue. Should take back Ayatollah Sheikh Wahid Khurasani, but in previous years he has. However, in this year, at least you know there are two. You see, even the bayan that was removed by the office of, the statement that was issued by the office of Sayyid Ali Sistani in regards to how majalis of Imam al-Hussein need to be upheld during pandemic times. And you find how the munafiqeen in this ummah twisted the words of the marja taqleed, such that one of the wakils of the marja in Najaf al-Ashraf had to go into a masjid and clarify. Upholding the majalis in a pandemic. You don't have to go further than the Quran and the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And the heart becomes the biggest indicator of what is haqq and batil and what your responsibility is. Shufu shabab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before we go to the Quran, the Imams alayhi salam teach us how to address Imam al-Hussein and how to address the Shuhada of Karbala. This is from the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein, which is recited on the night of Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. As you know, on Eid night it is mustahab to recite the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein. So as you recite the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein, there is one part of the ziyarah where you address the Ansar of Imam al-Hussein. Every year we claim and we say and we pray and we ask if we can be from the Ansar of Imam al-Hussein, which is why every Thursday night we say, فَيَا لَيْتَنَا كُنَّا مَعَكُمْ فَنَفُوزَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. So the Ansar of Imam al-Hussein, the likes of Habib ibn Madahir and Abbas and Muslim ibn Awsaja and Zuhair al-Kain, all of these are supposed to be role models for us. How do we address the role models? What do we learn from the role models? Show for this ziyarah that we recite on Eid night, Assalamu alaikum. After you finish the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein, this part of the ziyarah says you face the Shuhada, or you go towards the Shuhada, the grave of the Shuhada, the mass grave, and you perform your ziyarah there. You greet Imam al-Hussein, you recite the ziyarah of Hazrat or Sayyid Ali al-Akbar, and then you come to the Shuhada. What do you say to the Shuhada? Assalamu alaikum ayyuhas siddiqoon. Peace be upon you, O you who are siddiqoon, truthful. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu ma'as sadiqeen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. These are those who implemented that verse, Majlis on its own. Every line of this ziyarah, what we say to the Shuhada of Karbala, in itself is treasures of knowledge. Assalamu alaikum. This is the point. Assalamu alaikum ayyuhash shuhada us-sabirun. Peace be upon you, O martyrs, Shuhada. Just they were Shuhada? La. The fact they were Shaheed is mixed or paired together with another attribute. Their grand status was not only because they were Shuhada or Shaheed, martyrs. La. Shuhada as-sabirun. Shuhada who had sabr. Sabr yani patience. When does a person have patience? Patience is executed when a person in difficulty remains steadfast and doesn't lose his calm, doesn't lose his cool. Because when you lose your calm, you either become angry or you become scared and you panic. And what happens? You deter from your course of action. Al-ma'na sabr. Ashhadu annakum jahadtum fi sabilillah. I bear witness that you perform jihad in the way of Allah. Wasabartum. And you were patient. Alal adha fi janbillah. I bear witness that you were patient in the way of tribulations that you faced for the sake of Allah. So sabr in the face of tribulations. Sabr in the face of difficulties. Sahih Lola, this is from the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein. Now, look at what we're saying. The companions of Imam al-Hussein, we bear witness and we pledge allegiance and we pay tribute to you because you exhibited the characteristic of sabr. Ahsantum. Sabr yani patience. Patience in the face of difficulty, meaning what? Steadfast. Sahih. Look at what the Quran says. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal farajah. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 255, if my memory serves me right. 255 or 155. If you give me a moment, I will find out for you.
محمد وآل محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Verse number 155. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 155. Kalamuna, our talk on what? Sabr. In the face of difficulties. Raji'u Shabab, this verse of the Quran. Refer back to this verse of the Quran. And we are coming back to the commemoration of Muharram in the backdrop of a pandemic. Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 155. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, and we will test you. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ, we will test you. بِشَيْءٍ, we will test you with something from وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ. We will test you. We will test you with fear. وَالْجُوعِ, with hunger. وَنَقْسٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ, we will test you with a decline in your wealth. وَالْأَنفُسِ, we'll test you with your lives. وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and the fruits in terms of vegetation and so on and so forth. This verse of the Quran, we will test you. Min al-khawf, were the companions of Imam al-Hussein subjected to a hostile environment that in a normal situation leads to fear? Yes. Hundreds of thousands of people surrounded them. Baba, they were there to kill them. Fear. Were they tested with hunger? 3 days they were hungry and thirsty. Were they tested with a decline in wealth? Of course. Habib ibn Madahir had a family, had wife and children, left his profession, left his source of earning his income to be with Imam al-Hussein. Were they tested with their lives? They were tested with their lives. There is nothing in this verse of the Quran except that the companions of Imam al-Hussein were tested with it. Look what the Quran says. If you are steadfast in this test, what happens? وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, give glad tidings to those who have sabr in the backdrop of all these difficulties that they face in the way of an imtihan. When you have sabr in the face of hunger and thirst for 3 days, like Habib ibn Madahir, they had sabr when their lives were threatened. They had sabr when they were intimidated by large numbers. Allah said, Bashir, give glad tidings to those who have sabr. Bashir is sabirin. And because they had sabr, you then come to the ziyarah and you say, Assalamu alaikum, ayyuha sabirun, ayyuha shuhada'u sabirun. You take this verse of the Holy Quran in our context. Commemorating Shahr Muharram in the backdrop of a global pandemic. Is there khawf, Lola? There fear or no? Of course there is fear. But what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Bashir as-sabirin. This is an imtihan. In every day and age, those people were tested during the time of Imam al-Hadi with their limbs. There were those who were killed in the way of ziyarah, but they fearlessly went ahead to uphold the dhikr of Imam al-Hussein. Are we an exception to this imtihan? This year we have an imtihan from Allah Azza wa Jal. Imtihan, sarahatan, whether we agree to it or we don't agree to it. This is the reality. However, I must also make it clear, we have guidance from our maraja as well, that when the majalis are held with accompanying rules and regulations. And there is no contradiction between this. You see some of the balbala that is happening right now, the fitna and the garbage talks and the waswasa, whether it is on social media or between people who are claiming to be leaders, so-called leaders. There is no contradiction between holding a majlis aza and maintaining the levels of safety in order to have the pandemic under control. Who said there's a contradiction between this? Is there anything to stop somebody from sanitizing their hands and wearing a face mask before they come for a majlis? To social distance inside of a majlis? Is there anything to stop them from that? La. If a person has 1,000 square foot of space and the government tells you, Baba, we're telling you up to 30% use this space, and up to that 30% capacity, make sure that you take the necessary health precautions. 30% of 1,000 is what? 300? Is there any reason for 300 people to not uphold the majlis of Imam al-Hussein after everything we have said? Why only the majlis of Imam al-Hussein in its entirety has to be shut down? Why is it that only the majlis of Imam al-Hussein is outlined as a potential outlet for a virus to break down? Why? Walmart is not, when people go to do their groceries? The same ones who encourage that no majlis of Imam al-Hussein under no circumstance should be held. The same people who go to play golf and go to play any other thing. At that time, there was no pandemic. Baba, when you go to fill gas for your car, do you know the risk that you have put yourself at just when you're filling up fuel for your car? How many people touch that fuel pump that is over there and every other thing that is around it or not? Why only the majalis of Imam al-Hussein becomes a target? We make this position very clear. We do not say be reckless and have no disregard for any of the rules. La. But what we say is that person needs to have shuja, courage. Make the impossible possible. Uphold the majalis Imam al-Hussein, and at the same time ensure that you are compliant with the rules and regulations for health and safety, be it through the face mask and every other thing that needs to be done. Is it an inconvenience? Yes, it's an inconvenience. When you have a capacity hall of 1,000 people but only 300 people can attend, does it suck? Yes, it sucks, but we have to be creative. We have to be innovative. If we are not forward thinkers and are not able to come up with solutions to protect the majlis of Imam al-Hussein, then what hope is there for us to be part of a global movement that is going to establish peace and justice under the leadership of Maulana Sahib al-Amri wa Zaman? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa
I
I think conquering the world and bringing peace and justice is easy. La, Imam needs people also who are going to be creative, who are going to be at the forefront when it comes to innovative solutions in making sure. Imam doesn't need all this. Imam is ma'soom without doubt. But that initiative has to be over there. And this shabab is our responsibility and our imtihan in this year's Muharram. How to ensure the fervor, the electricity, the emotion, and the ilm that make up a majalis of Imam al-Hussein can be revived with all medical conditions being respected. All the conditions for health and safety being respected and implemented. Whether it is through decentralized, million small decentralized majalis, or however, there has to be an initiative that if this Muharram becomes another Muharram, you know what, I'm going to sit on my couch and with my cup of tea, a pack of crisps, listen to a lecture, and fi amanillah, go the next day to work. Khasara. Every year is an imtihan. This year there are those who will go above and beyond, and they will be registered in a list of Imam al-Hussein. And there are those who adapted and embraced the status quo who will miss out from being with Imam al-Hussein. This is not anything new. Many people have missed out being with Imam al-Hussein. From 61 age, people have been missing out on the barakat of Imam al-Hussein. We're talking with one of the brothers. This Muharram, it is what you make out of it. It's an imtihan. Imtihan, aqaidi, destiny is in your hands. Decide what you want to make from this commemoration of Imam al-Hussein. History will bear witness for you that Intum Mu'mineen upheld the majalis of Imam al-Hussein in the backdrop of a pandemic. History will write this for you, and Malaika will write for you that yes, there was this generation who maintained all the conditions for health and safety, and at the same time didn't compromise an inch on the majalis of Imam al-Hussein. To shufu the barakah that emanates from this. Do you know when barakah is associated with Imam al-Hussein, barakah, do you know, is not restricted to yourself. If you have a look at the hadith and the fiqh of hadith, have you read the hadith in the ziyarah where many times it says a person who performs the ziyarah غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ وَمَا تَأَخَّرَ? Hadith says his sins are forgiven of the past and the future. You should know ma'na of sins of the future. Do you know one of the interpretations is what? The sins of your future lineage is forgiven. Commemorating the Aza of Imam al-Hussein has an impact on your nasal, born and unborn. Talk about investment. This is why I will actually stop. I will not say, because the kalam is also applicable on the opposite direction. Those people who don't have ihtimam with Imam al-Hussein. This is our time, Shabab, to make history. This is our time to gain direct attention from the Mawla. People die just to get that one gaze from the Imam. You look at some of the people who go for ziyarah Sarahatan, within the ziyarah, they are the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the Zuwar, Allah Ya'lam, he walked from Basra or from where? Finally reached Karbala. He had only one thing on his lips. He said, Mawla, in this hujum, in this crowd, overwhelming crowd of 10, 15 million people, if you glance at me even for a second, for me, my ziyarah is accepted. He went back. Majalis of Imam al-Hussein is the same. The atmosphere that we create inside of our houses with our children. Do not let this electricity fade during these upcoming days. History is with us. It's the final hadith. This gives you and I and the mu'mineen who are there shawk. If there is reason and incentive or encouragement. Hadith al-Sharif narrates that once, I will read for you the part that is necessary, and we have masa'ib today, we have to give justice to the masa'ib. Hadith al-Sharif, where Rasulullah is sitting with Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhimus salam. Allahumma sholli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Rasulullah kissed Imam al-Hassan just under the lips. And he kissed Imam al-Hussein on the neck. For Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, children, went running to Sayyidati Nisa al-Alameen. And they said, Mother, our grandfather didn't treat us equally. You know, when you're a grandfather, and you have grandchildren, or even as a parent and you have children, when you have two children, if you don't deal with them equally, they feel bad very easily. You give one a bigger toy car, another one a smaller toy car. You give one, sometimes when you have two children, same age, even if you buy them the same toy cars but different colors, one feels bad. They want the same. So Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein went to Sayyidati Nisa al-Alameen. They said, Mother, Rasulullah did something very different with us today. He didn't treat us equally. She said, why? Imam Hassan says, Rasulullah kissed me just underneath the lips. And he kissed Imam al-Hussein on the neck. Why he didn't kiss both of us under the lips or both of us under the necks? On the neck. For Sayyidati Nisa al-Alameen went to Rasulullah and she said to him, Ya Abata, my two children, Hassan and Hussein, they're sad. Why you didn't treat them in the same way? Look at what Rasulullah says. فَإِنِّي شَمَمْتُهُ يعني Imam al-Hassan فَإِنِّي شَمَمْتُهُ فِي فَمِهِ لِأَنَّهُ يُسْقَى السَّمْ or sum. Says, I smelled him, his fragrance, and I kissed him underneath his mouth because I remembered of how he is going to be martyred with poison. He will be fed and administered poison. And then he goes on to say, Wa ammal Hussein, and as for Hussein, fa inni shamamtuhu fi nahrih, I smelled his neck and I kissed his neck. لأنه يذبح من الوريد إلى الوريد, because he is going to be slaughtered from the neck, and his jugular vein shall be severed from one end to another. Do you know what the response was? فَلَمَّا سَمِعَتْ فَاطِمَةَ Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, When she heard this, the hadith says, Bakat bukaan shadida. She cried with the most intense of crying. Somebody like Fatima alayhi salam weeping. You know, they say when Ibn Khattab al-La'in kicked her on the stomach and Mohsin became shaheed, he said Fatima cried out. But the pain in the cry of Fatima was such that the arsh of Allah was to crumble. So imagine this Fatima crying for Hussein, فَبَكَتْ مُكَاءً شَدِيدًا. As soon as she was weeping, what is the first thing she said? And this is Ghayat al-Majlis Shabab. What is the first thing she said after she stopped weeping or as her tears were rolling down her cheeks? وَقَالَتْ أَبَتَا مَتَى يَكُونُ ذَاكَ. When is this going to happen? When is my Hussein going to be slaughtered? Rasulullah says, فَقَالَ بُنَيَّ فِي زَمَانٍ. He says, oh my daughter, فِي زَمَانٍ خَالٍ مِنِّي وَمِنْكِ وَمِنْ أَبِيهِ. It will happen in an age, in a generation where neither you, I, or his father, Yani Amir al-Mu'mineen, will be there. Do you know what was the first concern of Sayyidah Fatima? Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen. This one whose rida is rida Allah and whose ghadab is ghadabullah. Do you know what was her first concern? She said, her first concern, she said, Abba, faman yabki alayh. Who is going to cry over Hussein? Look at the words of Sayyidah Zahra. وَمَنْ يَلْتَزِمْ بِإِقَامَةِ الْعَزَاءِ عَلَيْهِ. My father, who is going to take the responsibility and the onus of holding Majlis Azaa for Hussein? وَمَنْ يَلْتَزِمْ, who will have iltizam to uphold the majalis. فَقَالَ لَهَا بُنَيَّ فَاطِمَةَ. My daughter Fatima, إِنَّ نِسَاءَ أُمَّتِي يَبْكِينَ عَلَى نِسَاءَ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي وَرِجَالُكُمْ يَبْكُونَ عَلَى وَلَدِيَ الْحُسَيْنِ وَأَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ. The women shall weep your women, and my men shall weep Imam al-Hussein. These are the words. وَيُجَدِّدُونَ عَلَيْهِ الْعَزَاءِ جِيلًا بَعْدَ جِيلٍ. They will renew and uphold the azaa of Imam al-Hussein year after year. And you, Fatima, shall perform shafa'ah for their women, and I shall perform shafa'ah for them. This, ahibba'i, is where we write our destiny and we write history. With the tawfiq from Allah Azza wa Jal and from Sayyid al-Shahadah, that we do whatever is in our capacity, again with emphasis such that nobody takes words out of context. We do what we can while upholding the rules and the regulations of safety and preventing hazard in these times. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tiflāne Muslim bin Aqil, whose Shahadat we are commemorating tonight. Different historians have different opinions. For the sake of time today, we rely upon the hadith of Sheikh al-Saduq. Imam Muslim bin Aqil, from the children that he had, some of them were Shahadah and Shaheed in Karbala. And there were two children by the name of Muhammad and Ibrahim. On Sham-e Ghariban, as the tents were lit on fire, and the women were running for safety, and the children were running away in the darkness of the night from the burning tents, And they come out of a burning tent, not into refuge and safety, but they run into marauding horsemen who are hitting them and whipping them and insulting their fathers and forefathers. For in this chaos, these two children ran so far from the Mukhayyam that they were actually captured by the enemies. When the enemies asked them, these two children, Ibrahim and Muhammad, who are 9 and 11 or 10 and 11 according to the historians, Tiflāne Muslim who are buried in Musayyab. May Allah give us the opportunity to perform their ziyarah past Karbala Musayyab. When the enemies asked them, identify yourselves, you two children, they said, we are the children of Muslim bin Aqil. They were arrested and taken to the prison in Kufa. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, out of his hatred for Muslim bin Aqil, imprisoned these two children. Ibrahim, who was the elder one, the age of 11, and Muhammad, the younger one, the age of 9 or 10. For 1 year, they were in imprisonment. And Ibn Ziyad had said, these two children, do not feed them anything more than a salty glass of water in the evening and a coarse piece of bread. Child of 11 and 10 or 11 and 9 for a period of 1 year. After 1 year in imprisonment in Kufa, the children said, let us try with the jailer. Perhaps if we narrate to him our difficulties and explain to him our lineage, he might be lenient on us and let us free. I summarize this part of the Maqatil. But that night, the jailer who came to give them food and water had some sympathy for Amirul Mu'mineen and seemed to be from the lovers of Ahlul Bayt. So he said to the children, I shall leave the door of the prison open, the door of the jail open, and in the darkness of the night, escape from the open door and run as far as you can from Kufa, and Allah shall be your protector and your guide. These young children, 11 and 9, the last thing they saw was the day of Ashura and the burning tents with no news of their mother and no news of their family, alone in the city of Kufa. When they ran out of the prison in the darkness of the night, the hadith says they didn't know where to run, but they kept running through the alleyways and the cities of Kufa until morning. Children of 10 and 11, how far they will run? So they came to the door of a woman and they knocked on the door. This woman happened to be outside and she sees these children covered in sand and covered in dust. Malnutrition out of hunger, yet nur was emanating from their face. So she asked them, children, who are you? They said to her, do you know Ali ibn Abi Talib? She said, yes. She said, we are from his grandchildren. We have broken out from the jail of Ibn Ziyad. Will you give us safety for the remaining period of the night, such that we can get some rest, and as soon as daybreak happens, we shall run away and continue to run wherever we find safety? The women had mercy on them. So she brought them in the house and she prepared the spare room and she put the two children to bed. She put them to bed. The younger one, Muhammad, he says to his brother Ibrahim, even though we have broken out from the jail of Ibn Ziyad, brother, I feel this night is heavy. And I feel for some reason it might be the last night of our life. So I say, if this is our last night, let us hug each other until we fall asleep. So they fell asleep. And in the darkness of the night, the son-in-law of this woman comes. The son-in-law is from the army of Ibn Ziyad. He knocks on the door. He says, open the door. The lady says, what do you want from my house at this time? He says, the two children of Muslim bin Aqil have broken out of prison, and I've spent the entire night searching for them because Ibn Ziyad has put a reward of 2,000 dirhams for the one who brings the head of these children. The woman says to him, and what do you have to do with this reward? He says to her, open the door so I can rest in your house and in the morning continue my search. The woman was terrified. She opens the door. The man comes and eats and he falls asleep. Or while he is resting, he hears the heavy breathing of two young children behind a thin wall. So he stands up because he becomes suspicious. And in the darkness, he approaches the children. He turns on the candle and he sees two children sleeping there. He wakes them up violently and he says to the children, "Who are you?" Muhammad wakes up Ibrahim and he says, "Brother, wake up. The feeling that I had in the beginning of the night, I feel it has come true." So Ibrahim says to the man, "Oh man, we take you by an oath, qasam by Allah, if we tell you who we are, you will not harm us." The man takes a qasam by Allah and the Prophet. Two children, ma'soom, they trusted the man. They, by the saying that he has taken a qasam, they said to him, "We are Ibrahim and Muhammad, the children of Muslim bin Aqil." The Rawi says, as soon as Ibrahim identified himself, the man slapped Ibrahim across the face so hard, the child began to bleed from his nose and from his lip. Their hands were tied together until the time of Fajr. Allah, Allah, ya Shia, this is the beginning of Muharram. The narration mentions that the man tied the two children, their hands with ropes, and took them towards the outskirts of the city of Kufa, towards the Furat. He commanded his slave who was from Africa. He says to him, "Oh slave, go and behead these two children by the Furat and bring me back their heads." The slave goes towards Muhammad and Ibrahim, ready to behead them. But Muhammad says to them, "Oh man, your dark complexion reminds us of the dark complexion of Bilal, the muaddin of Rasulullah." When this man heard this, and he heard the name of Bilal, he threw away the sword, jumped in the Furat, and said to the man, "Never shall I kill these two children." The La'in then commands his son to behead Muhammad and Ibrahim. His son also refuses and goes away. The La'in comes forward towards Muhammad and Ibrahim and says, "It is in my destiny that I shall behead both of you." So Muhammad, the younger son, look at the madlumiyat of all Muhammad. So Muhammad looks at the man and he says, "Oh man, if you are going to kill us and you want money, why don't you sell us as slaves in the market?" Sell us as slaves in the market, you will get the same amount of money. The man says, "Never, until I spill your blood, I shall not let you go." The narrations mention the children said, "Oh man, if you must kill us, then give us the opportunity for us to recite at least one salat before you take our lives." The man says, "Pray what you want, for it shall never help you." Muhammad and Ibrahim, both of them stood up. They recited 4 rakat salat, 2 and 2 salatul shukr. And then the eldest one, Ibrahim, raised his hands towards the heaven and said, "Ya Allah, judge between us and those who have oppressed us." While his hands were up in kunut, the La'in came forward, Ya Shiat ala Muhammad, and struck the neck of Ibrahim. He struck the neck in such a manner, he separated the head from the rest of the body in a single strike. The body of Ibrahim fell down by the banks of the Furat. The blood was gushing out of the jugular veins. The hadith says, Sheikh Saduq mentions, the younger brother Muhammad, he looked at the headless body of his brother. He took the blood from the jugular vein and began to rub it on his face and on his chest. He said, "Ya Allah, Ya Rasul Allah, this is how I shall meet you on the day of judgment, covered in the blood of my brother." As soon as he said this, the La'in struck Muhammad with a sword. 2 lifeless, headless bodies on the bank of Furat. Allah, Allah. The hadith mentions that when he beheaded Ibrahim, he threw the body of Ibrahim into the Furat. But the Maktal says the body of the elder brother didn't float away. It waited as if it was waiting for the body of the younger one. Shabab, they were beheaded in Kufa, but these two children are buried in Musayyab for over 100 kilometers. Two headless bodies were floating in the Furat. وحسينا ومسلما ماتم محمد ماتم إبراهيم يا حسين
يا حسين 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 يا حسين
يا حسين
يا حسين
يا حسين
يا حسين
يا حسين
يا حسين
يا حسين
يا حسين
يا حسين
يا حسين
يا
يا
حسين
حسين
يا 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 حسين
ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, हाय हाय ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, को ज़रीफ़ सदाएं लेकर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, लाशों को रस्सियों में जकन कर दिए फिरो, लाशों को रस्सियों में जकन कर दिए फिरो, दानियाँ तो निकल के मर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, जाती थी जो कब्र पर, जाती थी जो कभी कभी कब्र से कैसे गुजर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, रमलाए पूछती थी सकीना से कैद में, रमलाए पूछती थी सकीना से कैद में, कान पालिया कर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, बाजार लेके जाओ ना बेपर्दा ज़ालिमों, बाजार लेके जाओ ना बेपर्दा ज़ालिमों, जाएगी हुसैन जाएगी हुसैन की बहनें कर गई, ज़हरा की बेटियों की रिदाएं उतर गई, और किरदारे उतर गई। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। वाला गया जीत करना बेरहा हो गया। तेरी लाश तो अलमा वाले मेरे नाती ऐसी तो ज़ैनब तेरे गई चादे गई चादे ऐसी तो ज़ैनब गई चादे ऐसी तो ज़ैनब गई अजवी बिनते हुसैन रोती है 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 मेरे हर छे जगह तू हुसैन चुने आए 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 पूरा न मिल सका मेरी चादर खुदा परदाए मेरी चादर खुदा परदाए मेरी चादर खुदा परदाए मेरी चादर खुदा परदाए मेरी चादर मेरी चादर मेरी चादर तू बता करके मातम रज़ा बकी है बिच 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 रोती है फातिमा सारा जहां
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا خليفة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا علي المرتضى، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، وعلى الأرواح التي هلت بفنائك عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم جميعا. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي عبد القادر العباس وفيك زينب أم كلثوم وبنتك سكينة. السلام عليكم يا سائر شهداء كربلاء جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا ابن مولاي، السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليكم يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، الشمس الشموس وعنيس النفوس، ايها المدفون دار الزيتوس، كن شفيعنا وجميع والدينا في يوم الجزاء، السلطان والحسن يا علي بن مصر البر واختك فاطمه المعصومه جميعا ورحمه الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفه الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك ورزقنا في الدنيا زيارتك وفي الآخرة شفاعتك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه وردك توعا وتمتعه فيها جميلا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى شكرا.
Shabab, there's a hand sanitizer if anyone wants it right now. If you don't want, just stop.
What did he announce that empty? Was this to be done before or after? Panju, my nigga, I don't want to come close to you. Yeah, no, that's fine. The best couch you have booked here. This is the next. Those touching it. Oh, good. I'm glad that you read it. Rahim. MashaAllah. You should see Panju. Big hair.
Everything is well. Sit.
Oh, sorry. No.